The alien woman was ready to leave then. He said, "Stay and be my family." The crater and the choice. The crater stank of ionized blood and melted polymer, and Eli Vance was pretty sure his left boot was stuck to someone's exosuit. He twisted, his foot frowned and gave it another tug. A disgusting squelch followed, and he finally staggered free, nearly tripping over the half-melted corpse of what he assumed used to be a skull or a vending unit with teeth. Hard to tell these days. Disgusting, Sally muttered behind him, her voice flat as an airlock's hiss. You humans have an uncanny talent for stepping in things that used to scream. Eli turned, hand resting on his rifle, but more for show than practicality. It wasn't loaded. He'd run out of ammo 3 corridors ago. Yeah, well, some of us were raised in cities. I grew up dodging feral snack drones in alleys. I'm trained for this. Sally's long ears twitched. It usually meant she was annoyed or amused, possibly both. Explain again why we're crawling through a derelict cruiser in a dead system, surrounded by radiation storms. Because, Eli said, waving a hand toward the darkened corridor that yawned ahead, this pile of junk is sitting on top of a cache of Class 9 orbital disruptors, which Command wants before the Morai do. Also, because someone, no names, thought it was a good idea to take a shortcut through the ship's intestines instead of waiting for evac. You were the one who said, and I quote, she intoned with mechanical precision, "Let's be heroes, Sal. They'll name ration bars after us." Eli shrugged. I stand by that. The Eli crunch, chocolate with a hint of reckless bravery. They moved through the corridor in silence, boots muffled against grime-slick plating. The lighting was out. Only the dull glow from Sally's shoulder beacon and the occasional sparking junction gave shape to the walls. Every few meters, the ship groaned as if resenting their intrusion. He knew better than to ask if she was afraid. She didn't get afraid. Not like he did. Her fear, if she had it, was the kind that locked itself behind her spine and waited to turn into fury. Still, he watched her from the corner of his eye. Her breathing was steady, her posture straight, but she was favoring her left leg. You're limping, he said. I'm fine. You were shot. I've been shot before. Yeah, but usually we have a medic, or at least one stim pack that isn't expired. She stopped, eyes glowing faintly in the dim. If I slow down, you can leave me. I'm not your responsibility. Eli blinked. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. She stared. Okay, second most romantic. There was a medic on Author's Prime who once told me I smelled like burnt marshmallows. That was special. Sally's ears twitched again. She started walking. They reached the old command core after 20 minutes of detours and 2 encounters with what Eli insisted were mutated maintenance bots. Sally dispatched both with surgical blasts to the central optic node, then let him poke their remains with a stick. The control room was a black cavity lit by erratic flashes from a dying emergency panel. A tangled mess of conduits hung like dead vines, and the air carried the sour tang of fried circuitry. There, Sally said, pointing to a wall safe behind what used to be a navigation console. She pried it open with her knife, fingers moving with practiced precision, and retrieved a sealed package the size of a small child. Disruptors? Eli asked. 3 of them. Enough to destabilize a moon or power a mid-sized toaster. She gave him a look. He grinned, then immediately winced as the floor lurched. The whole cruiser groaned around them, deeper this time. Gravity stabilizers are collapsing, Sally said, slinging the pack over her shoulder. Right, so we should, not be here. They turned, then stopped. The corridor behind them was gone, caved in, a mess of twisted bulkheads and flickering sparks. Eli rubbed the back of his neck. I'm going to take a wild guess and say the other exits are also buried in scrap. Sally didn't answer. She was already checking her wrist scanner. After a moment, she frowned. One escape pod remains functional. Lower deck, but gravity's failing. We'll have to move fast. Eli grunted. Define fast, because my definition includes not dragging a busted leg across 30 meters of unstable. The floor jolted again. Right, he said. Jogging it is. They ran, or hobbled in Sally's case, a stubborn limp in Eli's, more of a stumble with style. The hallway pitched as they moved, emergency lights strobing, alarms howling in alien tongues that made his teeth itch. At one point, a panel exploded beside them. Eli threw himself over Sally on instinct, catching the brunt of the blast against his back. When they hit the floor, he didn't move. Eli, he groaned. Still alive. Just thinking about how many parts of me are going to ache later. I think my spleen tried to escape. She rolled him off and sat up. Her face hovered close. He looked up at her, smoke swirling behind her head like a halo. You could have been killed, she said. You're welcome, he coughed. Besides, I like you. She blinked. You like me? Yeah, he winced. And not just in the you're good at shooting things way, though that too. She stared. I mean it, he said, quieter now. I want to start a family with you. Silence. A pipe hissed above them. Somewhere deep in the hull, a reactor began to whine. Sally said nothing, her expression unreadable. She stood, offered him a hand, and they kept moving. But her grip didn't loosen and she didn't let go. Eli hadn't slept in 36 hours, and the only thing keeping him upright was 2.5 cups of synth coffee and the faint hope that he could find the mess hall's secret stash of real sugar. The medics had cleared him after the cruiser incident with the usual scan, slap, and sarcasm. He still had some shrapnel in his shoulder and what he was pretty sure was a scorch mark shaped like a wombat on his lower back. But he could walk, joke, and steal extra rations. That was good enough. What wasn't good enough, what he couldn't stop circling back to, was the moment she didn't answer. Not a word, not even a grunt. He'd said it flat out, no drama. I want to start a family with you, like some brave idiot with dreams and soft parts. And she just held his hand. Firm, quiet. Like maybe she hadn't understood the words, or maybe she'd heard too many like them before and didn't trust them anymore. He was still turning that over when she walked into the medbay without warning, flanked by 2 junior officers, who scattered like startled birds the second she dismissed them. You're not resting, she said. I'm drinking, he replied. That's like sleeping, but more bitter. She looked at the cup in his hand, frowned, and sat beside him. He could tell she'd cleaned up, armor replaced, hair rebraided, the faint greenish burn on her cheek already fading. But she still moved, with that same careful economy, like a soldier always half expecting someone to shout orders. Your shoulder? Only hurts when I breathe. Then stop breathing. Tempting, but I've got another plan. It involves smuggling chocolate from the diplomatic wing and convincing you to teach me how to use a plasma blade without removing my own kneecaps. She didn't smile, but one ear twitched. Progress. A long silence passed, the kind that feels like it has a shape. I meant what I said, Eli murmured. I know. I didn't say it because we were about to die. That was just convenient timing. Another silence. I have no idea what a family looks like, she said finally. Well, I can tell you what it doesn't look like. Me cooking. The last time I tried to make a meal, the fire suppression system had to be exercised. That's not comforting. I'm not here to comfort. I'm here to wing it until something explodes. She looked at him, eyes narrowed. You would raise children in the middle of all this? Eli leaned back. I'd raise them out of all this. On some quiet moon, maybe. Somewhere with trees. You ever seen a pine forest? She shook her head. Then that settled. Pine forests, questionable architecture, a compost bin I swear I'll maintain and absolutely won't forget exists after 2 weeks. You're describing a fantasy. I'm describing a possibility. She was quiet again. Then, with a low exhale, she reached into her vest and pulled out a small, battered data slate. She handed it to him without a word. The screen flickered on, a document, no title, just lines of Varellan script interspersed with small sketches. A cradle, a strange hybrid plant, a home with a reinforced roof. You've been thinking about it, he said, blinking. For years, she admitted. But only as a concept, a deviation. Something I would never be permitted to pursue. And now I don't. No. Eli handed the slate back. Well, we've got time. They didn't, but sometimes a lie was the kindest thing you could offer. Later that evening, the masal was nearly empty. The lights dimmed to simulate evening, and the overhead music, some garbled human jazz fusion selected by an AI with questionable taste, played softly in the background. Eli sat at the corner table pushing around a rehydrated vegetable with the same expression one might wear at a tax audit. Celery sat across from him. "You're making that face again," she said. "This carrot tried to bite me. That's a bean. Everything's a bean when you've lost hope." She stared at his tray, then hers, then back to him. "My people have a tradition. When we consider building a future with someone, we share our worst survival meal." "That sounds terrifying." "It is. What's yours?" She slid a tin toward him. He opened it. It smelled like someone had dipped moss in engine grease and added a pinch of resentment. He took a bite. He coughed. "That's not food. That's a cry for help." "Correct." They both laughed. A real laugh, not forced or ironic, just the kind that slips out before your brain has a chance to censor it. He reached into his bag and pulled out a squash bar wrapped in faded foil. "I'll do you one better. This is the last snack pack Delta 7 manufactured during the war on Varnus. It's basically historical." She inspected it like it might bite. "Is that mold?" "No, it's nostalgia." She bit it, immediately gagged. "It tastes like betrayal." Eli grinned. "We're bonding." The next morning, orders arrived. Deployment schedules, strategic overviews. Sally was being reassigned. She didn't tell him right away, not because she was hiding it, but because she hadn't decided. Yet, there was an option to decline. Rare, dangerous, but real. She stood in the hallway outside his quarters, hand hovering over the comm. Inside, she could hear him humming something off-key. "Just say it," she whispered to herself. Say it and let it break whatever it breaks, but she didn't. Not yet. She walked away, boots silent against the cold steel floor. 3 days passed before she said anything. Long enough for Eli to nearly convince himself it had all been a shared delusion. Long enough to build a tower of theories, each one more ridiculous than the last. Maybe she'd been reassigned to a secret diplomatic mission, or abducted by jealous admirers, or maybe she'd simply forgotten how human time worked and thought 3 days was 3 hours. He'd even started drafting a dramatic resignation letter to send to Central Command, full of noble nonsense about love and space and planting vegetables that didn't glow in the dark. Then she appeared, right in the middle of his training simulation. The virtual enemy, a group of irate robotic poultry, courtesy of some prank by engineering, vanished the second she stepped onto the mat. Eli turned, out of breath, half drenched in sweat, holding a blunt practice blade that looked more like a broomstick than a weapon. "You're late." "I'm early. You just didn't know what time it was." He lowered the weapon. "That's either very philosophical or very rude. I've been thinking. That's always dangerous. And I've made a decision." She stepped forward, close enough that he could see the faint purple line on her temple from the last battle, close enough that he noticed her shoulders weren't as tense as before. "I'm not going," she said, "to the assignment, to anywhere without you." His breath caught somewhere between a joke and a laugh. "You sure?" "I've got a lot of annoying habits. I sleep diagonally, I quote old movies at inappropriate times, and I name every insect I meet. I know. You don't even flinch when I say things like 'I love you more than caffeinated algae.' That's commitment." She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. "We've survived wars. We've buried friends. We've stared into black holes together. I think we can survive bad metaphors." He dropped the blade. "I should warn you, my metaphors get worse when I'm happy." She reached into her coat and pulled out a sealed package. "I had this made by the quartermaster. It's a tradition." He opened it. Inside, 2 carved pendants, one shaped like a star, the other like a tree. Crude, but clearly crafted with care. "On my planet, when 2 people choose each other, They carry each other's symbol. He touched the star. This is yours? It's what I saw the night I first believed we might actually survive. You were bleeding and laughing and quoting that film about space pirates. I'd rather die in zero gravity than live without dessert, Eli said with a grin. Exactly. He fastened the pendant around his neck. She did the same. Now, she said, we plan for the pine forest. For everything. It took 6 weeks, a forged requisition order, and a particularly persuasive bribe involving pickled fungi, but they found the place. A tiny, overlooked moon orbiting the 4th planet in the Telvan system. Unclaimed, uninhabited, and most importantly, completely unimportant to the war. They named it Sail, a blend of their names. It sounded like something out of an old myth, which was fitting, because the idea of peace still felt like fantasy. The first structure was a dome, ugly, crooked, built with more enthusiasm than engineering skill. Eli tried to call it the fortress of domestic bliss until Sally threatened to weld the door shut with him inside. They grew things, real things, plants that didn't glow or talk or demand existential validation. The soil was strange, but with a little help from recycled nutrient paste and a highly illegal fertilizer drone, they made it work. Sally built the water system. Eli wired the solar net. He also electrocuted himself 3 times, once while humming love songs. They fought, of course. They fought about laundry and spice levels and whether naming a chicken Admiral Beakerson was appropriate. But they always ended up laughing. One day, while fixing a faulty solar panel, Eli turned to her and said, "You know, I used to think peace would be boring. And now I'm worried we're going to run out of things to argue about. I can create new grievances." "I'm very creative," he nodded. "Good, keep it fresh." The seasons shifted. The days grew longer. The plants thrived. So did they. Visitors came. A former squad mate with a broken leg and nowhere to go. A diplomat fleeing a scandal. A pair of orphans from the ruined Varnan colonies. They didn't plan to build a community, but life rarely cared about plans. They built more domes. Then one night, sitting beneath a blue leaf tree that swayed like it breathed, Sally leaned against him and said, "I've been thinking." He groaned. "Not again. I want to have a child." Eli blinked. "Like a pet child or the regular kind?" She elbowed him. He sobered. "Are you sure?" "I'm terrified. But yes." "So am I. But yeah, let's do it." They didn't rush. They read books. They argued about names. They fought over crib placement and then realized they hadn't even started building a crib yet. Months passed. When the child finally came, curious eyes, long ears, laughter like music, Eli held them with trembling hands and whispered, "Welcome to the chaos." They named her Lyra. In the old Varellan tongue, it meant hope grown in dark places. Years went by. Eli planted trees taller than the dome. Sally taught Lyra to hunt with a bow and how to swear in 3 galactic dialects. They hosted dinners for ragged veterans and lost wanderers. They argued, made up, built, broke, healed. And one evening, while the stars stretched wide over their tiny world, Eli stood beside Sally, their daughter asleep inside, and said, "I still can't believe you didn't run when I told you I wanted this." "I didn't run," she said, resting her hand on his, "because I wanted it too." He looked at her, at the woman who had once wept silently when offered a future she thought impossible, and, he said softly, "Thank you for choosing it with me." She smiled then. "For real. Thank you for not giving up." Above them, the stars blinked. The night hummed. The future, once a distant dream, now breathed beside them. And finally, she let herself believe it would last.